Yep, I think we are here. We are live. What's up, everybody? This is Rafael Cruz with Miami Strength Club, and welcome to this live stream. Tonight, we're gonna talk about if you're semi-buff, if you believe you made some gains, but you want to make more gains. What's the strategy to go about talking about nutrition, talking about what kind of programs. And the question that always comes up, kind of like how long. So there's a lot of information here. Stay tuned and stay alert. Guys, I want to say something that if you like this information, you can definitely go ahead, like and subscribe and share this. It helps the channel. You know the drill. And it's a really, really appreciated. I took a look at the statistics for this channel. It's only a baby right now, but more than 80% of the people watching the videos are not subscribing yet or not leaving any interaction. So it'll go a long way. Thank you very much. So now a little bit about, are you big enough yet? All right, you have done some training already. You've put on some weight. Maybe you went from, like, I don't know, mid 135 pounds or low 130 pounds or so to 140 something, 150. It's done, it's taking you a ton of work to get there, but you can optimize a lot of things. So let's start somewhere, and let's start practically. So what is it that you want to do right now? What you want to do is focus on three things: your nutrition, your main exercises, and your auxiliary exercises. Let's break that down. Let's talk about nutrition first. So right here, what do you need to do? What do you need to grow? Well, if you are, let's just say an example, if you're a hard gainer, or maybe you have no problem gaining at all. But for most people, it takes up to 5 to 10% of increasing your calories. And I'm not talking about junk, although junk will get you, to increase weight, but that's not the healthy way to do it. But if you increase your calories by 5 to 10%, you might see, mostly everybody sees a good improvement in muscle gains, in hypertrophy. Now, what does that look like? If you figured out that your nutrition, your calories are like 2,500 calories, 2,500 calories per day, and you add, let's say 10%, which is 250 calories. If you add 5%, is 125 calories more. Let's say like a protein shake. A lot of people will start making gains with just adding one protein shake. It doesn't have to be a mass gainer or anything like that. If you add that somewhere in your day, for a lot of people, that's just enough to start seeing gains. But remember, you are semi-buff. You are maybe semi-buff. You've done some gains, but you need to go further. So maybe you go up to 10% of that. 250 calories for some people. If you are heavier, taller, heavier and whatnot, maybe you want to do 300 calories, maybe a little bit more than 10% or so. And if you're a hard gainer, you're going to have to play around a little bit with more food and the times you eat, and a little bit of your programming. But it has to do with your caloric intake. Now, that's not complicated, is it? It's pretty simple, but it's not easy to do. How do you get a rhythm? How do you get a rhythm? Well, I'm going to tell you what. What I'm going to say, a lot of you will agree. What I'm going to say, a lot of you won't agree, and that's ouch. Ouch. I don't want to break your sensibilities right there, but it is what it is. You have to eat more, and you have to forget about your six-pack for now. If you have a bunch of ribs showing and a couple of, things on your body that looks like a six-pack, and you're not that big of a guy, that muscular, maybe you ought to sacrifice a little bit on the gain and go for a bulk. That, of course, a little bit of hyperbolic. I mean, if your emphasis is growing, then you have to emphasize growing, and maybe your being lean is going to be sacrificed for a bit. That's what that means. Now, let's just say that you're stuffed. You're getting to the gym. You are, stuffed. You can barely reach squat depth. You can, you feel like your tummy, your stomach, your abdomen is so bloated, full of food from all day eating, that when you bent down to do a deadlift, like, oh man, you're about to burp, well, guess what? This is when you start making some gains. And here's the programs. Here are the programs. Let's actually hit a little bit of ambience here. If you started doing some random machines here and there and you got some gains, you can definitely focus on a linear progression style kind of program. The best way you could do that is using barbells. That means your exercises are going to be the squat, your exercises are going to be the bench press, big deadlift, and of course, barbell press, shoulder press, how it's called. A lot of people do it sitting down, a lot of people do it standing. You got the variations of all the exercises that I talked about. But that is the thing that is going to give you a lot of size. In a linear progression, you increase the weights and leave the sets and reps the same thing for as long as that is working for you. That means for as long as that the weights are going up, for as long as your technique is clean, for as long as you can recover. That all ties into the same aspect of growing. How much you're lifting, your technique, and how you can recover from all of that. And of course, if you are growing or not. So, what kind of linear progression, how does that look like over time? Because you have to understand something. What I'm describing here is not something that is going to happen in 2 weeks. This is not some sort of magic pill or something like that. It's not that. What I'm describing here is a process, something that is going to happen over a period of time, and you're going to respond to what you're doing in a practical and sensible manner. Like something that makes sense. It's not like you're going to put 20 pounds in 2 weeks. That's probably, I don't know, maybe it happens to some people, but that's not the average stuff. So you're adding some weight, 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds every workout. During a linear progression, most people are going to be lifting heavy enough that you're going to need a day on, a day off, and that works very well for bulking. So let's just say that a few weeks have gone through that. You learned your barbells. And when I say a few weeks, I'm talking about, for those of you who always ask, okay, so how long is it going to take? We're talking about months. A solid rank beginner that starts a linear progression is going to enjoy really nice gains for a few months, like 3, 4, sometimes 6 months. Now you've done the 6 months. What starts happening? You start finding that you have to add exercises. Number one, it might be somewhat monotonous, and that's the nature of the work anyways, but the nature of a linear progression style program can be monotonous for some people. That has to do with your personality and your personal choices, but whatever, for me it was always fun. But you might want to start doing chin-ups, dips. Of course, you can do some power exercises and conditioning, sled pushes, sled pulls, getting into hill running, up. I don't necessarily like sprinting myself, but that's something that people will do, especially if you are into athletics. Getting getting a good solid speed work on the ground is going to make a lot of difference for some of you. So all of that happens after some time in a linear progression when you are not doing so much increases all the time. Maybe you're doing a weekly increase, maybe you're doing a semi-weekly increase. Sometimes your program changes from a same exercises all the time and same weight to what's called a heavy, light, medium days. That is, let's say Monday you go heavy, then on Wednesday you go light, just because you are not completely recovered from the work you did the previous training day. And then you do a medium. On top of that, by the time you get there, you have some complexity in your program. You're doing all the kind of exercises, and that's what it takes. That's what it takes. We talked about your nutrition. You cleaned up your nutrition. You put on those extra calories for you to keep growing, to keep being in the hypertrophic spectrum right there when it comes to calorie and intake. So you continue to do all that. You find, what do you find? At some point, it's going to be really hard to go up in weight. What do you do there? Well, you start adding some complexity to the exercise. What does that mean? If you're stuck, if you are, let's say you are lifting over 98%, 97% of your 1RM, your 1 rep max, and the bar stalls very, very slowly mid-shin, just as it comes off the floor, or at some point on the way up. If this becomes a pattern, then you can say that you found a weak area in your exercise. So you're going to have to troubleshoot that. Well, there are different kinds of exercises to address these deficiencies. In the case of a deadlift, you have deficit deadlift, you have Romanian deadlift, you have stiff-legged deadlift, a whole bunch of variations of the exercise. You have block and rack pulls, for example. You have tempo, things that you do like 4 times. You create a cadence of the movement. You have also paused or halting deadlift, and you can hold at different points in the range of motion. These are things that you're going to have to figure out what is the best movement for you. In the case, for example, of bench, I want to go through all the exercises and sort of like throw a few variations that can get you going through. Let's just go, for example, to the squat. All right, so on the squat, you've got, for some people, front squat, pause squats, tempo squats, pin squats or rack squats. There's boxed squats for some people, although you would be wise to understand that doing box squats with heavy weight is not necessarily a good thing, just because when your hips and your thighs, the back of your hip, hit the box that you're tapping on, you have the potential for the weight on top of your spine and your body becoming to a stop, and then the weight is compressing your spine or bending it out of shape in a manner that might not be particularly good for some people. So use boxed squats judiciously when you're doing barbell, back squats with a barbell. In other cases, you can still have box squats, but if you're not backloaded, it might be okay. If you're doing a front squat that is on a box, that typically it's very, very doable, and you don't have that thing to look out for. There's a couple of other things that I have personally found that take you into a different level of performance when it comes to troubleshooting your deficiencies. Range of motion. Sometimes as the weight goes up, because the technique suffers, and there's things to work through. The range of motions, it's not all entirely there. So sometimes you just got to come down in weight, work through that, and then continue to increase. Troubleshoot it. One good way to find out if you're stuck, sort of like to unstuck yourself, to continue to make gains, is to have a checklist. I didn't come up with this. There's Mark Ripito and his bunch of great coaches from Starting Strength. They have a 3 questions or so. There's an article in their website. It's an amazing. I suggest you go check it out as well. There's tons of good literature there. So there's 3 questions. Are you resting enough between reps? In between sets. Are you resting enough in between sets? You have to bring a clock, a stopwatch, something alarm, something that gives you the same kind of rest all the time, because otherwise you just might be guessing, and you don't want to be guessing with how much you rest. There's another question that you can ask yourself if things are not going right in your workout. Did you recover enough? That means, are you still talking to your friends at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, for no reason, or something of the sort? If that's not the case, then chances are that you're going to have to reconsider the way you are recovering. And that means prioritizing what is it that you're going to do so that you can recover. And then there is, resting in between sets, recovery, and also another aspect of recovery, which is nutrition. How much are you eating? Are you in a caloric deficit and expecting your weights to continue to go to increase just like that? Well, that's not how it happens. Just because you are a person, a human, and all of us need fuel, especially if we have great demands from exercise and from a training program. And once and last, one of those other things that can unstuck you, and it's almost not completely directly related to the heavy weight, but it has to do with the body. Listen, for whatever it's worth, we have to be able to move better when we get stronger. There is a lot of stigma. I myself used to think that, I don't have to do any mobility. I don't want to be, frolicking on the floor, stretching and whatnot. That's not for me, and X, Y, and Z. Well, I still think that I don't have to be a professional yoga instructor, but I definitely want to move well. So if you're feeling stiff, if you are going through through that phase sometimes where your hips are a little bit here and there, you do certain movements and you kind of like feel the stretch pulling hard, your hamstrings, your lower back. You probably are getting stronger on the way, getting more muscular. But also you can't scratch your back. You go into the shower and you need a stick in order to wash your back, which is not a negative, but you can start doing some mobility. You can search the internet, you can search YouTube, you can buy a book, you can go to your preferred, doctor or therapist and whatnot, and work on your mobility. That's fine. I am a proponent of, when you're stronger and you are bigger, if you can move better, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, then you also should do the work for that. Caveat though, if you are prioritizing your strength over other things because you are thinking of competition and whatnot, and you are pretty up there, then you're going to have to make a checklist of your priorities. It's not, everything has a context. Everything in training has a context, and it has to do, the choices you make are directly related or highly influenced at the very least with what kind of outcomes you want. And another nuance, I tell you, if you are thinking of competing or doing some sort of performative event, And getting more mobile is going to help you train better, and training better in the line, in the direction of your outcomes, it's going to give you better outcomes. Then there's a reason, or a few reasons you can find as why to do, mobility work and flexibility and whatnot. I have friends and family that we sit down on the floor, we turn on the TV, watching something, and we do some stretching there, and that's pretty nice. Let's move on. Let's talk about what kind of program. So let's say you have done a linear progression. Now you've done an extension of a linear progression. We talked about heavy, light, medium. There are other variations to that. And for that matter, there are programs like a 4-day split. In a 4-day split, you can program more frequency for your exercises. For example, maybe you can squat 4 times a day. 4 times a week. And you don't necessarily have to think as a week, as in a 7-day week. Sometimes when it comes to training and programming, you can extend or shorten the actual duration of a week. For example, a 4-day split could be done in 4 days, literally 4 days. Then you take a day break, and then you do that. That would be a very odd way to do it, but it might be possible depending for whom. I'd never have done it that way myself, unless I had a really, really good reason to train days to days, back to back, and then I'd modify it. The typical 4-day split, you have a lower body, upper body. You take a day break, you take a day for recovery, and then you do another upper body, lower body. There's enough time to put conditioning in there, to put all the elements that we talked about, auxiliary exercises, partial range of motions, increase your volume. That means you can do more sets and more reps of some exercises. Of course, you're going to have to program around that and not necessarily go for the top weights, but those are things you can start doing in a 4-day split. Some people like a 4-day split also to introduce like a bodybuilding type of flow into their workout. I tell you what, that's often very fun when you start, getting pumps. You program with weights that are like from 60%, 55% of your 1RM, and you do a bunch of reps, 10, 15 reps sometimes per set, and you can cut the rest to a minute or less. And trust me, you do 4 long sets of an exercise. Your conditioning is going to go up. Your muscle endurance is going to go up. You get a huge pump. You break a very big sweat. That's very fun and a nice break for some people. Working out into a point where you're almost out of breath through the entire workout, and you challenge yourself. It wouldn't be for everybody, I know that, but those are variations that you can do, things that you can try. On top of that, there is always the game of recovery. We're kind of like wrapping it now. As far as what kind of other programs you can do, we talked about the 4-day split. There are adding long sets as well. I like a long set every now and then. That means I do my prescribed work, and I have planned to get a barbell with maybe 30%, 40% of my 1RM, and I do a long set there, something 10, 12, 15 reps, depending on how I feel, and I get really, really good high amount of reps out of that. And that's extra work, and that matters when you are trying to, get hypertrophic, just get bigger. With that said, I kind of like want to do a recount here. Let's go over generally what we talked about. We talked about your nutrition, adding extra calories, and figuring that out so that you can gain weight. If you have to understand what kind of physiology you have. If you are somebody who just puts on weight and puts on muscle without having to, resort to magic or tricks or something of the sort. If you're a hard gainer, you're gonna have to play around with how much calories you're putting extra in your training, how you recover, how you feel from that, how your workouts develop through that. We also talked about unstocking yourself through a linear progression with barbell exercises, how you can go very, very simple for a long time, adding weight to your body and adding weight on the barbell so that you actually get stronger and also bigger at the same time without having to become a deconditioned athlete. There was that nuance where you have to eat just enough, but you don't necessarily have to become a deconditioned athlete, someone who has excess body fat percent. Typically, anyone who goes up to 18-20% body fat is going to add muscle rather steadily if the training is there, if the training stimuli is there. We also talked about other kinds of additional programming, as it is auxiliary exercises, accessory exercises, putting things there for hypertrophy, and conditioning, doing mobility work if that's something that you need, different exercises, different variations, so that you can definitely work through and troubleshoot your deficiencies when it comes to the training. And ultimately, we talk about other kinds of programming, which are 4-day splits. And there's also sort of like bodybuilding style nuances that you can program in your program. With that said, I think you have plenty of enough material here to start working and troubleshooting your programming. And that's about it, guys. My name is Rafael Cruz, and this is being sponsored by Miami Strength Club, a small studio in North Miami. If you're a local, you can definitely check it out. Go to miamistrengthclub.com. We actually have a promo code now, Lift 2022. You can start a 3-day program at half the price for your first month. It is a great way to get started and save a buck. You know how the economy is right now, and we definitely take account onto that, and we want to help you out to get started. Also, check our pages on social media and hit like, hit subscribe, share this content. If you liked it, just help other people get access to this kind of content. I really appreciate it, and have a great night.